episode 28 of the Bithell Games Podcast. I'm Alexander Slawinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell.
Each week we talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't generally find time to talk about because we are playing and or making games. Show note: if you listen to this show on iTunes, we would deeply appreciate you rating us 5 stars. Maybe even throw in a nice comment or two. That'd be really nice. Thank you. Mike, what you playing?
What am I playing? I'm playing Mirror's Edge again.
The Catalyst?
The Catalyst. The catalytic conversion. I'm quite proud of that joke. That was good.
That was
Did anyone use that on any reviews?
That was a car joke.
That was solid. I mean, and given my complete lack of knowledge about cars as established last episode, that's more impressive. So I've been playing it. I've honestly, since we got back from E3, I've not really played video games much because I've just been way too busy. But I went back to it, and I'm impressed by a lot of it. Like, there's a lot of it that I know people aren't responding great to. I feel like a lot of people just were disappointed, I guess, with this. But yeah, I really like it.
What was that disappointment about?
I think
so. Mirror's Edge, for folks who don't know, is running across buildings, sliding, jumping on walls, parkouring all over the place, and in the previous version, with cutscenes brought to you by eSurance.
So that's mean, but fair. I actually really I did quite like the story in the first one. I agree with you. Like the way the cutscenes were done was clearly kind of
the story was
cost cutting.
Yeah. No, the story was solid.
The biggest disappointment to a lot of players is the description you just gave is about 50% of this game, and about 50% of this game is open world stuff and combat. I think that's the big one. Is Mirror's Edge as a cultural level, one of the most impressive things about Mirror's Edge was at a time where everyone was making first-person shooters, it was a game that had some combat, but it was very light. You could shoot guns. I remember that was in there, but it was a very kind of light piece of content. And then there was a little bit of melee combat as well, but it was very light.
It was mostly running, jumping, climbing trees, putting on makeup while you're up there.
That's it. And the promise was that you were going to be running for the whole time. And this one, I think,
is it the Sonic problem?
That it got too slow?
No. That the expectation of Mirror's Edge and the expectation of Sonic is that it's running, sliding, hopping.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, it is that in the vast majority. And actually, I think one of my biggest criticisms of it is with the open world structure, that becomes very transparent because every side mission is, could you run over there? Here's a timer. But it's not that much. So there are other kinds, but it's a lot of racing, and that kind of, I think that sets the mechanics bare in a way. But no, and I have criticisms of the story. The story feels it feels disjointed. It feels like they felt the need to add lots of complexity to it. But what I really am digging, and it's the thing that a lot of people don't like, I said this on Twitter and I got a lot of people telling me they don't like it, is the combat. I actually really think the melee combat's fantastic in it. And I think a lot of people react negatively to the melee combat because...
But didn't people agree with you that it's good? It's just not good for that game?
Exactly. People agree that it's good, but people, I think, are annoyed at its existence and how often the game kind of puts you in there. I streamed a bit of it, and one of the comments I got when I was playing was I would often run away from melee combat, and people would say, oh, you can run away from melee combat, because I remember at launch, one of the big criticisms was these kind of enforced melee combat sections, and some of them are forced, but a lot of them aren't. So you can engage with it as much or as little as you like, but it's a really capable combat system, which is about movement and placement in a way that really leans into Mirror's Edge's strengths. So, you get bonuses if you can manage to get above a character and punch them and do an attack. You get more damage if you move around walls. The thing that I really love, that I think I might have mentioned even in the first podcast where I talked about Mirror's Edge, but I still think it's really clever, is that there's a directional element. So you hold down the left thumbstick in a direction as you hit the punch or the kick button, and the enemy is knocked in that direction. But what they do with that is it means that if you've got two enemies, you can knock one in the way of the other one's gun, or you can knock one into someone else, causing them both to stumble and take extra damage. Or, as is my favourite move, you can lure someone close to a wall and then bash their face into the wall and do them extra damage. And it feels very natural in a way that often with these kind of environmental melee combat systems, it's very much, I'm thinking of that Bourne Identity game from many years back, or even like some of the Batman games. It's like you go close to an environmental interaction and there's a context action button. If you press it, it plays a pre-can animation of you smashing the baddie into that. This feels more smooth. It feels more natural in terms of I'm scoping out an environment and going, oh, there's a ledge there. I can knock that character off of there, then jump off of that ledge and attack them from midair. And it's a really nice platformer combat system, which... It's one of those things. It's one of those things with Mirror's Edge, and I feel this way with a lot of AAA games, and it's something I admire when I see it, is someone said that this game had to have combat in it. Someone said, we cannot release a Mirror's Edge game that's just running. Someone high up, someone important, probably someone wearing a tie, and then some chump like me in a t-shirt and jeans had to actually try and make that entertaining. And whoever that person was did their job and create something that I think thoroughly works. I think you can argue whether it should or shouldn't be in the game, but I think they've delivered something really substantive. Don't know. Don't worry. Move on. That's what spell check's for. And it works. I really like it, and I admire that design. Substantive. I don't know. It feels like there should be another T in there somewhere. What have you been playing? Is it Witcher still?
It is Witcher.
Jeez. That's a big game, isn't it?
It's a massive, massive game. A couple of my friends who have children are like, I should really get back into Witcher. I'm like, you can't. Like, you wait until they graduate, and then you'll have the time to go back and do it. Yeah, Witcher is enormous, and even the side quests have so much content. I was on my way to doing the main quest, and then I walked by while I was riding by this really nice house, and it was on my right side, and there was a dude like help. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll stop. Get off the horse. Hey, what's going on? He's just like, oh, like this guy right here, he's dead or dying or something like that. And he's just like, he came from in there. It's like, okay, I'll go in there, and it's probably just gonna be like a wraith or something like that. So go inside. But no, there was a whole 15-20 minute section of doing a ceremony of recalling these like cursed elves. It was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. It's just, that's what that game is. It's like, you think, okay, it's a side quest, it's going to be like this quick little thing, right? But no, it ends up being like a full-blown cutscene with a whole, like, and items and everything like that. So here's where I am with The Witcher, and here's what I think of Blood and Wine, which is the final expansion. This
is like a chivalrous kind of... He goes to chivalry country, doesn't he? Basically, he goes to like a really nice, posh...
Really nice. And
yeah,
and I finally figured
which
out...
I love as a character thing, like as someone who enjoyed the story of the game, even though I didn't stick with it as long as you did. It did tempt me, that aspect of like, yeah, putting that character in amongst like a more traditional fantasy setting, that kind of appeals to me. That's an interesting idea.
But what's so great about it is that if you've played the game as long as I have, it's like the difference of going on vacation when you're 20 as compared to when you're 30. Whereas, like, when you're 20, it's like Velen and, like, the beginning of the game, where it's, like, really, like, you're just scraping by. Like, you don't really have the money to do anything. You're sleeping under Italian bridges. Your car's breaking down in the middle of the Greek desert. You've got a guy selling potatoes and watermelons in the back of a truck trying to make one of your friends get into the truck with him. Like, that's what Velen and the beginning part of the... By the time you get to Blood and Wine, it's like going to a sandals resort. It's the It's
like me in Croatia.
Yeah, it's you in Croatia. That's exactly what it is. You know, you've been working towards this. You got all your potions. You made all your bombs. You've got a house now. You've got a residence. You have a butler who's taking care of that stuff. Like, you're still living your life. You still want to have a little bit of adventure and go out there. And that's Blood and Wine. Like,
I love it. You've got middle age. You've played this game so long, you've become middle aged.
That's what it is.
That's fantastic.
It's Geralt getting to that point in his life where it's just like, I deserve a little something, just a little something, and that's Witcher Blood and Wine.
I'm excited to hear more. That expansiveness. That's what unfortunately lost it for me. Just because I load Mirror's Edge into my PlayStation, I'm going to be able to have like an exciting, fun experience for half an hour and then leave it. And that's kind of how I like my games. That said, Red Dead, I'm tempted. If they've just they put Xbox One compatibility in.
Oh, we're going to talk about this? Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're going to bring it up, then
yes.
If you have not played Red Dead,
me out of it. No, I have played it and I loved it, and I'm just trying to decide whether I want to commit. To
Did you finish it?
I got to the story ending. Yes, I didn't do every side mission or whatever, but no, I know how I got to the end. Okay, the very very specific ending.
Specific
the very
because it's funny because there's
a lot of people leave after something previous
that first end, and they don't get to that second end, and it's just like, wait, what happens? It's like, wait, it's like 20 more minutes of the game. You really should play that part. It kind of wraps it all up.
So that's the thing, is I'm kind of tempted to go and play just like mainline the core campaign and just go and explore that world some more.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't remember it, or it's just, you should absolutely play. Red Dead Redemption is fantastic.
It was amazing. How long ago was it? I feel like I played that game like 8 years ago, something like that.
It was a long time ago now, but now that you're asking questions, you could have looked it up in the meantime. So you need to talk for 5 seconds while I.
Are you Googling now?
While I wiki it.
I'm okay. Well, I do want to go back to it. I remember being massively impressed by it at the time, and I was into Deadwood and westerns and all that stuff, so I got really into it. But apparently it's quite good. 720p, 30 FPS, but like a stable 30 FPS, so that's exciting.
Wow, when do you think it came out?
I was trying to think, and I think I was at Blitz, so actually no, it would have been. Yeah, I would guess 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, 2010.
Only 6 years ago.
Yeah, but I mean that's still a long time.
I must have just moved to London then. Because I have these distinct memories of playing it with like some friends from the specific company, so who I don't really speak to anymore. Yeah, wow. Okay, that's later than I thought.
But yeah, if you somehow missed Red Dead Redemption the first time around. And you have an Xbox One, pick that up. Definitely.
Oh, it's brilliant. And I imagine as well, if you go and find it somewhere, you can probably find it quite cheap because it's that you put the disc in or you buy it in the store. So presumably one can find the disc at a relatively low cost these days.
I have no song for this portion of the show anymore. So, what's going on at the studio? Well, for starters, Mike, you've moved. Or moving?
Well, I'm in the process of moving. I'm waiting on my final kind of references to go through. But yes, I'm moving to East London, sunny East London.
But I thought we were moving away from London. We were getting out of London.
I thought we were. I thought we were remaining in one thing and leaving to go to Bristol. Yes, but unfortunately. The last couple of weeks have thrown a spanner in the works a little bit, haven't they?
Yes. So, as we brought up during our Brexit episode, things have changed a bit because of the uncertainty of what is going to happen over the next couple of years. So, we are not planning on opening up the getting a studio space and starting to fill that in because we are uncertain of what the future holds for the UK. Which allowed Mike then to be like, hey, I kind of like London. I'd like to stay here then. But I don't want to be where I am right now. So can I go someplace else? So that's what ended up happening.
I mean, on a personal level, I've done very well out of it. I'm moving to an incredibly nice new apartment, closer to where Kerry, my girlfriend, works. So that's going to be great.
Well, it's also worked out for the company because of the pound going down. Our revenues are up a bit.
In the very short term, we're doing really well.
Yeah, we're doing really well.
Just waiting for the inevitable boot to drop.
But yeah, the complication here is that as a UK business, we have to hold tight now, and another sort of complication is that I became more expensive, which...
But worth every penny, Alexander.
I know, but...
We got to fund your witch habit somehow, haven't we?
Apparently, but I was, as the person who does the budget...
You're like, fire me. This isn't working.
Well, so that's the joke, right? The joke is, if I were you...
Yeah.
I would actually leverage me to say, hey, Alexander, especially, I mean, frankly, if the pound collapses anymore, like, it would be you turning to me and saying, you know what, Alexander, I like you. I do. You're a good kid. But you have to move over here now.
I think we established a long time ago that I'm nicer than you, didn't we? Isn't that something that feels like that's an established truth of our working relationship, is that I'm nice.
We did
do that.
But there's the part of me that's thinking as you, going, no, really, Mike, you should really turn around to me and be like, if the pound goes down any further, that I have to move over there and start living over there, because what you're essentially
you're a filthy immigrant, so you're not welcome anymore.
Well, I mean, for the next 2 years, I'm still welcome.
That's true.
Because what you need to watch out for now is inflation, right? Like that's
what's coming. That's the next step in this.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of if international economics is not your fun times. So what
I don't think it's many people's fun times,
right? But I enjoy it, so I'd like to take a couple seconds to explain it. So where we are right now is that, yes, I have become more expensive because the pound has dropped. If the pound drops further, then, like I said, it would be in Mike's best interest to say, hey, you know what? You have to move over here because the cost of you is just going to become too much. And as a rational business person, he should probably focus his employment on UK nationals or anyone that utilizes the pound, because the cost of other people becomes more expensive. Of course, there's a huge caveat in this, in that, you know, Eastern Europe is still a cost-effective option no matter where the pound goes over the next couple years. But in terms of having people close by, or just directly working, it makes sense to have UK nationals. This is all good and fine as long as inflation or essentially the cost of milk, you know, or the cost of food in the UK or rents does not start to increase. And at that point, a much larger problem is at hand. So it's where we are right now is we're in an okay spot, because as we stated during the Brexit episode, our money comes from the States and from Europe, and so therefore the conversion rate is in our favor when it goes into the coffers. However, the cost of me and any Europeans or Americans we are working with at this time,
which we do have a couple,
which we do,
yep.
They have now increased about 15%.
But they're very good, so that's...
No, they're very good people. They are lovely people. I enjoy those people who have that weird accent that I do, and I appreciate their work. But yeah, they're more expensive now. And
I mean, the thing is, though, you know, we've had a very fortunate year. and we were set up for. I feel like we were set up for a rainy day, even if we didn't realize we were set up for a rainy day, and I think we're gonna be fine. The not settling into a studio thing, it's frustrating in the short term. I think it's something we're still absolutely going to move towards, but it's just slowed that process down.
I'm upset about it. I am. Like, I'll admit it.
No, I am. It slows down, the journey that we want to go on. Well, kind of basically stops us on that journey. But I'm interested in some of the things we're talking about, doing after the thing we're currently doing, and I think that can still kind of go ahead. And I keep thinking back to Volume and the scale of production that was managed, without that office, and I think we can do something bigger than that. I think we can actually kind of grow there. So I basically, I don't want it to be a downer. It's not, we're not screwed.
No, it's not a downer.
It's just something we need to plan around, and unfortunately, it does lower our ability to make long-term plans.
Yes, I would call it a pivot. It's just we had an expectation that there was going to be this office space and that we were going to put people in that office space, but now we are leaning back towards this idea of remote management of the way Thomas was done, Volume was done, and many independent studios do things this
which
way.
We know we can do as well, which is good. There's definitely less unknowns. It's less exciting because it's not building that the stuff we wanted to build, but
you can't really make a company culture in cyberspace, or maybe you can, and that's exactly what I need to start focusing my attention on. Is how do you make a company culture in cyberspace?
Well, we're all going to change. We're all going to reskin Skype to have a blue skin. That's going to be very important to the process. We'll start a Slack channel with a zany name. No, I hear you, and I agree with you on a lot of this. I think I think all of this actually. It's a shame, but production will continue. We'll keep making games. It's interesting to me actually how much the tone of the conversation is influencing two games in particular. Like the one we're currently making, I'm noticing going in one direction based on what's going on right now in the country. And the next project we've been talking about a bit, well, I think there is an idea that we have that is kind of heavily inspired by these events, and I think that's going to be a really interesting project potentially as well. So on a creative level, weirdly I feel that some stuff's come out of this. It's a very, very small, concession in a horrible situation, but yeah, I think we're going to be okay, and we're not suffering as much as a lot of people, which I always feel the need to say because we're doing fine, we're doing good.
Yeah, no, it's not a. I mean, that's the thing about it is it's not a competition of who's worse off. It's just that this has impacts across the board.
It has an effect for everyone, yeah.
And that's really what we're supposed to bring up in this is to discuss, because if we were building a studio, I mean, that's the entire point of the what's going on at the studio section. It's just that we're supposed to talk about what's going on.
This is the episode where this is the episode where Joss Whedon's found out that he's got to kind of wrap up the show a little bit early this season.
Yeah.
And kind of retconning in new characters and why were you speeding through that bit of plot? So yeah, no, it's a fork in the story of the company, definitely. There's an alternate universe where it went the other way, which is going to be very different to where we end up now. But yeah, and I get to move into an apartment which is close to some of my friends, which is quite nice as well. So it's swings and roundabouts.
And now it's time for Reader Mail, the Reader Mail, and now it's time. I think I've done that one before, but it's an oldie. It's a goodie. It's an oldie, but it's a goodie.
That almost became Last of the Summer Wine. Did that ever make its way onto like PBS or something? No? It's a TV show in Britain which the theme tune was da 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 da. It was that.
This one comes to us from Twitter, from Ollie S. What thought process lies behind the games going on sale on various platforms?
What thought process?
Yeah. They tell us.
They tell us a sale. I mean, that's the reality. So it depends. Obviously, different companies have different relationships with platform holders. As kind of, I guess, we're a relatively known indie studio. It means that often to various platforms, consoles, PC, whatever, will come to us and say, there is this event coming up. With Steam, I think that's automated. Like, we just get notifications. With different console places, they often kind of curate those sales and go, well, we're just going to do a sale on these specific games. And they'll come to us and they'll have their suggestions of what kind of discounts they want to do. I would say probably most of the time we go with what the suggestion is because they know their numbers. But if we feel that something needs to be a bit higher or a bit lower, we will nudge it. And then I guess the final way is we do occasionally go to platforms and say, hey, we think this is going to be a week we would like to do a sale because of this, this, and this, and then we'll work with the platform to come up with a way of getting that right. But it's unfortunately, I think the thing that players often want, and I think would probably actually be in our favour, is universally, Volume is on sale for a week on every platform at this exact same discount. I know that would be amazing for us, and I think that would be great for players in terms of understanding and be able to make the choice based on.
It'd be also a lot easier for messaging because
in terms of PR and all that side of things. Yeah, but that's
because they're right. I mean, the issue is that, for example, Volume went on sale with Sony Europe about a month ago, and we got plenty of feedback. Some
from Americans,
some not. Stating, oh, that's really unfair. Why are you doing it this way? Blah blah. We don't control that. So, sorry.
No, and I think players don't get that. I think especially because of services like Steam, which are international, I think players often don't realize that. Especially with Sony. I mean, Microsoft is more international, but even they have regional stuff. Sony is very specifically, it's two different companies, and therefore, sales are on different times. You have
four different companies.
Well,
Sony Europe, Sony Europe, Sony America, and we are starting to get into the Asian market now.
Yeah,
and so that's another two different companies.
So it's a complexity, but I mean that's the answer is basically when we can and when we think it's a good idea, we do discounts. I don't think it's any secret that Thomas Was Alone benefited massively from being in and out of sales on every platform all the time. I don't think. I think that's what kind of built Thomas up over time. And Volume, we're seeing kind of a similar trend with that. Just being in discounts is a great way of kind of keeping that game talked about and looked at. So I think it's always going to be a part of the process. As we spoke about on last week's episode, there's definitely things I wouldn't want to do in terms of sales, in terms of deep discounts, or discounting a game the week after it comes out, something like that. But yeah, it seems to be a policy that's working for us.
Yeah, to answer the question super directly, one, when they tell us, and two, in a blue moon, when we decide on
I can think of some occasions. So I know there was one, I'm not going to give specifics, but I know there was one sale on one of our games where we were like, you know what, it's been a while since that's been a sale.
Yep.
And this opportunity, we know people are going to be talking about this game at this point in time, so can we get a sale on this platform to coincide with that? And it's just a case of, at that point it becomes all the boring business stuff of just, we have contacts at each of these companies that we can go to and go, hey, do you want to maybe do this? And you work out something that works for both parties. But
that was genuinely one example of the 7 or 8 times these titles have been on sale in the last year.
Exactly.
Okay. So next up, hi guys, love the podcast. Think you do a wonderful job. I was wondering, in your experience, when is good enough good enough? As an indie dev, I know that you can spend much time working and polishing all areas of my game, but as a programmer, it's hard to stop optimizing code even when I know that a simple solution will do the work. When would you recommend to stop working on something and move to something else? On another note, I love the podcast. Think you guys are doing wonderful work. I was wondering if I could help you by translating it to Spanish so that the YouTube version can have Spanish subtitles and be able to reach a Spanish-speaking audience. Looking forward to your reply and looking forward to playing your awesome games. Louis, FDL. So I'm going to take the Spanish part first. So we have this terrible policy, which
it's a horrible rule we have.
On some level, I still strongly...
You don't like it at all.
I strongly disagree with it. Is that everyone gets paid.
There you go.
Everyone
Who gets paid, Alexander?
Everyone gets paid.
That's right.
So with that said, Louis, sincerely appreciate you wanting to do the subtitles. If this show continues to go on, and here's the good news: if this show continues to be on the path that it is on, I will be giving consideration to enhancing our spend on it, because the show does actually cost money to produce every single week, and so if that were to occur, there's certain upgrades that we should probably consider, and potentially having some localization put into it is definitely one of those. So thank you for your offer, but we politely cannot do that at this time due to our policy.
It's a good policy, Alexander.
I know.
Everyone gets paid.
I know.
Some people get paid more because they're Americans.
But whose fault is that?
Mine for being too nice. What was the other question?
So the actual question was about when is good enough good enough?
Oh, yes.
As a programmer, when do you stop optimizing code? When is a simple solution will do the work? When would you recommend stop working on something and move along to something else?
So there's multiple questions embedded there in quite a good programmer way. There's a lot of nested grouping going on. The optimization question is probably the easiest one to answer. There is an absolute desire, and I'm a programmer. I'm nowhere near as good as you are probably, but I'm a programmer. I want stuff optimized. I want stuff. The amount of boring chatter I give Alexander about, I just got the frame rate up. No one cares. This is the thing. They care about the frame rate. Wait, hold on. Let's roll that back. No, you have to let me finish the sentence, Alexander. It's very important. No one cares past the point that they do. Is the key thing with this stuff. Is if you can get your game running stably
at 60
FPS, you're
at
done.
1080p.
You're done. That's the thing, is where I see coders in particular kind of get fixated on optimization is where they move past the point the player actually notices. So if you're optimizing and cleaning up and making things awesome past the point you think realistically the player's going to care or notice, then you should stop. You're at that point, it is masturbatory. You're doing it because you want to feel clever. You're not doing it to serve the audience. And I think that's always for me, that's always should be the focus is the work that I'm doing making the player's experience better? If it is, great. If it's not, don't bother.
Which is 60 FPS.
Which is 60. I'd say there's certain genres of games that don't need 60 FPS.
Mike,
you don't need. Go on,
Mike.
Yeah.
There have been novels written about 60 FPS.
I'm with them on 60 FPS for action, adventure, racing, anything which requires reaction and reflex, or even just moving a character feels better in 60 FPS. I'm with them. I mean, I'm sure Hearthstone's not 60 FPS. Actually, probably Hearthstone is because Blizzard, right? FPS. But it doesn't need to be. Is my point. Is you can,
but not on phones. And frankly, someone should have optimized that better.
Yeah, well, that's how easy it is, Alexander. Is you just tell developers optimize it, and they magically are able to achieve whatever you ask them to. That's no, but that's my with coding.
By the way, programmers, please don't send me nastygrams. I'm totally
He's playing.
kidding.
He's playing.
I'm playing right now.
He doesn't mean it. But yeah. So for me, it's all about the perception of the player. If the player's not aware of it, I mean. I also do. I get there's this classic story about Steve Jobs that he was very, very particular about how the interior of a Mac is laid out in terms of organization of the parts, even though no one could open the damn thing without a specialized key, so no customer would ever see inside the box. For him, it was very kind of it was almost philosophical and spiritual, his desire to get the design of the interior perfect. I get that. I don't subscribe to that camp. For me, if the Mac works better than everyone else's Mac, I don't care how it looks inside, and that's my take on that. But there are, other people have different opinions. But yeah, make your game run well, make it bug free, make it decent, but don't. If no one's going to notice, then you were wasting your time. On the larger point of when do you finish a game. It's what is the old saying? I don't know who it's attributed to, but no work of art is ever finished. It's just abandoned. And I think that's true of games. You'll never actually finish a video game. There are things you can do that get a game to be complete and good with the audience, and that's where I would go back to playtesting, which again is a focus of last week's episode. Is put it in front of an audience, find out if it works, find out if it's fun, or if you're going for fun, or if it's achieving the objective that you've set out to have as a developer. If it is, then maybe it is done. If it isn't, then maybe it needs more work. Or, if you feel that it's never going to be possible to succeed, maybe you do need to abandon it. I tend to always say finish a game, even if it's an awful game. Even if it's a 5 out of 10, get it out the door so you can move on to the next one, because you'll still learn something from finishing and shipping that game. But yeah, I think it's a very tough one, and ultimately you're the only person who's ever going to be able to make that decision. But there are players who will be able to tell you and help you to make that decision by telling you whether they like it or not, or if it works. And I think that's a very useful data point. And if you don't have, the other thing, of course, is often you have an external kind of rule in terms of like you're working with a platform holder who you've told the release date to, so you have to hit that, or your money's running out. Or, you want to start on new things, you have to get this finished. But yeah, I would always say put it in front of players. They'll tell you if it's done. A player's going to tell you if your game's not finished very quickly.
Not your friends, though.
Not your friends. Never show your friends your game. They'll love it because they love it.
Finishing is like pornography. I don't know when it is, but I know it when I see it.
Fair play.
If you have a burning question about games, game development, or just the complexities of the universe, you can send those questions to us via contact@BithellGames.com. That's contact@BithellGames.com, through the YouTube comments of the show, or on Twitter by pinging @MikeBithell, @Slewinski, or our AI @VolumeGame. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bithell Games Podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews and 5 stars on iTunes, likes and subscribes on YouTube, and positive reinforcement on whatever other platform you're hearing the show on whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. We'll be back next week. I'm Alexander Slewinski. Thanks again, and get in the last word, Mike.
Relativistic.